Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Tumblr 2014 is not a year. It's a state of mind.
It's a state of mind.
Feeling.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're already so into that we haven't even recorded our intros
That's
yet.
That's going to be the
great
pre-intro. We're so great at this. Hello, you weeaboo shits. I'm Lauren Shippen, professional writer who is so heckin' excited to do a little time traveling today.
And I'm Cher McAnelly, very head of entertainment at Tumblr, much 2014 aesthetic blogger.
Much 2014 aesthetic. And this is Dashboard Diaries, a podcast for you, the folks who are in this internet bunker with us. We talk about what's going on our favorite hell site, get into what we like to call Tumblr lore, do fandom deep dives, and share the times when we've gone feral over a new ship. And Cher, what has your last month on Tumblr been like?
It has been quite a month. Just last night was the Emmys. So obviously that has been a moment, or last night as of the moment we're recording this. And definitely could get into that, but I feel like, honestly, we should just dive into it in a future episode because there's so much to talk about to do with the Emmys.
Shogun Sweep!
Oh my God, yes. Is that your Feels Corner?
Absolutely.
18 Emmys.
18
Incredible.
fucking Emmys.
Holy
Let's
shit.
go.
Yes. And hacks on my end. I also, you may, if you listen to this podcast regularly, you may remember our last episode, or was it the last episode where we hopped into the CORB-it, or was it the CORB?
Oh, yeah, the CORB.
So during our Dashboard Confessionals segment, I shared a post that I had reblogged, I think in 2014 or somewhere around there on Tumblr, and it was a photo of a corn on the cob, but it said corn on the orb, and it was round. I shared that it's CORB. Oh yeah, wait,
CORB,
corn.
It's round now.
It's round now, is what the post said. Yeah, thank you. And corn should be round, and we'll get into my platform on that later. But I shared it in our internal Tumblr Slack, as we share our favorite post of the week. And so I dropped in the CORB throwback, and one of our designers on the team immediately made a CORB emoji for our internal Slack. And then I was talking to her I replied and I was like, we should is there a way that we could get, CORB in the solar system? It should be in CORB-it. And she immediately she added CORB to the solar system map. And I do have that. I'm just going to drop that in our episode notes for you to see, Lauren. And I have asked her to please reblog it to the CORB post so that the world and universe can see the CORB in CORB-it as
I've got to see the CORB in CORB-it
as intended.
I need that emoji for the Atypical Artists Discord. Oh my God, there it is.
You did?
It's the biggest planet. No, yes. I'm saying I need that emoji. I need you to share that emoji with me.
Oh my gosh, yes, I'll send it to you.
This is incredible.
Please do.
It is so huge.
The
CORB is so huge.
It's time for the CORB.
It's time for the CORB.
Each kernel is a country on the
That's
CORB.
Incredible. Oh my God. It is, of course, habitable.
Obviously. Corn is full of water and carbs and sugar. It's so
incredible.
You can eat the CORB to live on the CORB.
The perfect planet.
It's farm ready. We're ready for the CORB.
We are so ready for the CORB.
Coming to theaters fall 2025. The CORB.
The rise of the CORB.
So anyway, that was my last week on Tumblr.
Incredible.
What was your last week on Tumblr, Lauren?
So my last month on Tumblr, it's mid-September now as we're recording this, and already fall is here. And there's this one post about corn mazes that goes around my dash every fall that I just really love. Speaking of corn, speaking of the CORB. But yeah, I've just been reblogging a lot of really good fall posts because we are there. We are at that time. And that's always just an exciting time on Tumblr for me, is the beginning of skeleton season and fall season. And I'm vamping because I'm trying to find this fucking corn maze post.
So, and I agree with you. It's one of my favorite seasons on Tumblr. You actually reminded me. I'm like, I need to hop in and reblog my favorite post of the season, which is the dancing pumpkin man.
Oh, I mean,
I love
the best.
Just iconic, legendary. I mean, it's not, it's not fall without the dancing pumpkin man.
Of course not. No, he's so vital to the ecosystem.
Truly. He and the CORB, the pumpkin and the CORB.
The pumpkin and the CORB.
For a balanced internet diet.
That sounds like some sort of like children's book, right? Like the pumpkin and the CORB. We're best friends.
Oh my gosh. Lauren, is this our next venture? The pumpkin and the
possibly
CORB.
The pumpkin and the CORB.
From the website that brought you Goncharov.
The pumpkin and the CORB.
A new adventure.
Okay, I don't know where this corn maze post is. I'm going to have to find it and reblog it later. But basically, it was just a post about the particular unique experience of doing a corn maze. Cher, have you done a corn maze ever in your life?
I have, yes, a few.
What's your feeling on the corn maze?
They're a little disconcerting.
Mm-hmm.
My feeling on the corn maze is I'm always down to get lost in a corn maze. They always feel a little haunted, is my opinion.
Yeah. No,
What about
I think that's accurate. Yeah, I'll definitely reblog this post because I think this post sums up my feelings on the corn maze pretty well, which is that like it's not fun, except it is fun.
Yeah.
And you want to do it, but you also don't necessarily have a good time, but then you're happy that you've done it. Like it's this weird and it's like
yes.
And it's a very, I think, American pastime, right? Like I don't know, I mean, like I'm sure Canada has corn mazes too, but I don't know necessarily that like corn mazes are a big thing globally writ large. And it's just, yeah. So this corn maze post, I think, perfectly captures the essence of like doing a corn maze not being fun, but you enjoy it anyway. And so, yeah, I'm a big proponent of the corn maze. Which so that's what I was up to over the last couple of weeks is this corn maze post and thinking about corn mazes.
You've been in the maze of the corn maze mentally.
Yes,
exactly. Mental corn maze.
A mental corn maze. I'm always in the mental corn maze.
It always comes back to the corn. In the mental corn maze on the CORB. Actually, the last time I went to a corn maze, they had both a corn. They had a corn maze. I went to the corn maze. The corn maze that everyone has. Their local corn maze.
I mean, I went to my local corn maze last year too.
Literally, I went to like the combination pumpkin patch corn maze, which back to the pumpkin and the CORB. It always goes back. And did the corn maze. And then after the corn maze, I got into the corn pit. Does your local pumpkin patch and corn maze have a corn pit?
You know what? Yes, it does, actually. I didn't go in the corn pit last time, but so you went in how was the corn pit?
The corn pit was incredible, Lauren. It was the most fun I've ever had at corn maze adjacent activities. And I think what, people are always sent to the maze, but they yearn for the pit, Lauren.
It does sound like we're describing some sort of like weird, like old Greek trials that you have to endure in order to make it to the afterlife.
If you make it through the corn maze, you get an extra hour in the corn pit.
Would you like to describe for our listeners who maybe have not been in a corn pit before what a corn pit is?
I would love to, Lauren. That's such a good question. The corn pit is, as you may have deduced by now, a enormous pit of dried corn. It's kind of like a ball pit, but it's corn. It's a few feet
corn
deep.
Kernels.
Corn kernels. Yes, thank you. That's a really, really important distinction, Lauren.
Unpopped corn kernels.
Unpopped corn kernels, but I'm interested in the popcorn pit. And also corn, a pit of dried corn on the cob. Still on the cob. That is if you get lost in the corn maze, you're sent
punished with
to
the cob pit.
Yeah, and it really is. It's so much fun. It is definitely meant for children, but don't let that prevent you from experiencing the pit. It's truly amazing. I actually, Lauren.
Do you have a picture of you in the corn pit?
I do. I have a picture of me in the corn pit. I have to find it. I'll find it later.
I'm going to need you to post this to your Tumblr or to Dashboard. Yeah.
I absolutely will. It's quite a photo. It used to be the header on my website that it appears I definitely forgot about, and the website
You know what? I think I've seen this photo.
So, it's very paint me like draw me like one of your French girls.
Yeah.
Draw me like one of your farm girls in the corn pit.
In the corn pit.
Anyway, Anyway, yeah, I also am looking forward to seeing your corn maze post. I'm sorry that I have gotten us lost so far from the entrance of the corn maze.
This is what the corn maze is about. And speaking of getting lost in strange, twisty places, let's go dive into our archives and do a little bit of dashboard confessionals.
The corn pit that is our archives.
The corn pit that is our archives. Cher, what do you have from the corn pit this month?
I really dug deep in the corn pit and found a post from 2014. It felt only right due to the fact that we're doing a 2014 throwback episode as our main segment. And it's a text post originally posted by This Disgusting Ribbon. And it reads, "Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys," bellows the orc to his orc friends. "Orcs know what menus are. Orcs know what restaurants are. Are there bistros in Mordor? These are the questions I need answering."
This is a great question. That does imply the existence of menus in Middle-earth.
Right? And I just think, first off, if it doesn't exist already, because it might, I really want the Mordor restaurant fic. I want to know what an orc restaurant looks like. What is an orc waiter like? Or do they have, there's so many great follow-up questions and so many fic opportunities, like an Applebee's, like in Mordor.
Yeah. I think the book Legends and Lattes is essentially that concept. Because I think it's about an orc coffee shop owner, perhaps. And it's like a romance between like an orc and someone else. I forget exactly. I've not read it, to be fair, but it is a very popular, cozy romance novel.
Oh
fantasy.
My gosh.
Yeah.
I did not know about this. I need to look into Legend and Lattes. The answers are there already. I'm so
The
excited
answers are there for you.
What do you have for us this week, Lauren?
I also brought something from 2014. And actually, September 2014 is as far back as my current archive goes. Because even though I've been on Tumblr since late 2008, early 2009, I switched blogs. I started a new blog when I started my YouTube channel, and I started my YouTube channel in 2014. And so my current personal private fandom blog goes back to 2014. And this is one of the first posts that I ever reblogged. It is from Assassin Regrets, who is still an active Tumblr user with a rainbow of check marks next to their name, which I love, which I just think is great. And it is a Hannibal post to the tune of the Gaston song from Beauty and the Beast. So I am just going to sing it for you to give you the full experience. No one sweats like Will Graham, has more pets than Will Graham. No one outlines more chalk silhouettes than Will Graham. I use antlers in all my investigating. Oh, what a guy, Will Graham. I love this post.
That was beautiful, Lauren. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So yeah, I mean, this is just a perfect encapsulation of 2014 to me, because 2014 was season 2 of Hannibal. And actually, I'm just going to transition us into our main topic. I'm going to do a little table setting, if you will.
Yes. Perfect for the Hannibal reference as well.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, 2014 was when the second season of Hannibal was on, and the finale, which I think is one of the best episodes of television of all time, came out. But also, it was the year in which Shake It Off was on the radio all the time. And Ed Sheeran, Maroon 5, Nicki Minaj were all over the radio waves. And in terms of what was in theaters, 2014 was the year that John Wick came out. It was the year that Captain America: The Winter Soldier, one of Tumblr's most iconic texts, came out. It was a year that was now 10 years ago, which I can't quite believe. And that, I think, as we were sort of discussing before we actually started recording, kind of encapsulates the Tumblr experience in many ways. Yeah, so for me, 2014 is very much Taylor Swift's 1989, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and Hannibal. What encapsulates 2014 for you?
I would say 2014, Super Hulock, just as an entire universe. And actually, one of the questions I wrote down was that we can, circle back to was, what is the 2024 version of Super Hulock, and why is it Super Hulock?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
And then in addition to that, like Tumblr girl aesthetic blogging, like grunge skins, like of it all. I was a huge Skins fan. Still like love the show. Haven't watched it in ages, but I think, Skins walked so Euphoria could run. Effie and Rue are the same side of the same coin, 10 years apart.
Totally.
And so I would say that like was a big part of my Tumblr experience. It was very much like the aesthetic blogging. I was a preppy blogger, so I was deep in that content, and then also very much, and also Lana Del Rey. I feel like Lana Del Rey like is so the epitome of like the 2014 Tumblr girl, or the 2012 through 2014 Tumblr era, as you were talking about earlier. And then Supernatural literally has been Supernatural has been in the CORB-it, has been in the in the Tumblr universe, since before Tumblr even came about. Like I feel like
Tumblr, it predates Tumblr.
Yeah, like Tumblr was made to be a home for the Supernatural fandom.
It's really
and
true.
So many other things, but that was part of it. I'm sure, though David didn't know at the time. I would say
that's really what it was about.
Yeah, that really would encapsulate my like 2014 Tumblr experience.
Well, and I think it's interesting. When we talk about Super Hulock, we often talk about 2012, right? Because 2012, in many ways, was kind of like the height of a particular brand of like what we know now as like a Tumblr cringe culture, right? Because it was like the very, very tail end of the 2000s scene culture, emo culture, and sort of like meme culture of Icon has cheeseburger and RAR and XD, kind of all like that was 2012 was like the very last year that any of that stuff was still kind of on the internet in any significant way. And then I think we can all agree that like culturally speaking, things took a turn in 2016, 2017. You and I were both surprised to find that the Sayonara Weeaboo Shits post was from 2016. But I think that kind of fits with the narrative that I'm getting at, which is that 2014 was, of course, when DashCon happened. Mm-hmm. And I think it really was sort of the peak, like 2012 to 2016 being this very specific Tumblr era, and 2014 kind of being the peak of that particular era. And then, of course, 2016, in America at least, things politically shifted quite a bit, and that I think changed the culture a lot. Also, 2014 was, I think, kind of one of the last good years of Vine. And I feel like, but, we didn't really get like TikTok until like, I don't know, 2018 is really when it started to like actually gain any kind of traction. So 2015 to 2017 was kind of this like weird dead spot for like a lot of the other internet, whereas 2014 I feel like was sort of peak Twitter, it was peak Vine, it was like YouTube was sort of entering a different era. And so that's kind of why we're talking about it today, because it's been 10 years since 2014, and it does feel in a lot of ways like the platonic ideal of like old Tumblr. Yeah, it's just, it really, I feel like even kind of just the overall, I don't know, vibe, like off platform in the real world. But it really does seem like that. Like, I feel like we're seeing such a resurgence in terms of like the aesthetics, like cores being such a thing. And, like that, obviously came up on Tumblr in a big way. Aesthetic blogging gave way to all the cores, which we're in now. And I think, like the return to kind of, there's, the return to the Y2K like fashion, but very much also to that, more like aughts and then mid 10s, early 2010s fashion as well. So and the shows that are trending, I went through our 2014 year in review and looked at the top series and then compared them to the past few weeks that have been trending. And it's wild how the lists align, both in just having the exact same shows. Supernatural, obviously, it never left the list. Duh. Incredible. Sherlock and Teen Wolf were a couple of the top shows. Obviously, Dead Boy Detectives, I would venture to say, is a combination of Sherlock and Teen Wolf. Is my pitch here. I think comparison. You're right. I like that. Game of Thrones was on the list. House of the Dragon, has been back. Like the Vampire Diaries, Interview with the Vampire. The Fairly Odd Parents are one of the biggest shows. Fairly Odd Parents, A New Wish,
is coming out. Gravity Falls was one of the top shows. Gravity Falls is the top show on Tumblr, has been every single week for the past 6 weeks.
Jesus
7
Christ.
now, I think. Danny Phantom was one of the top shows. Danny Phantom continues to be one of the top shows. Doctor Who, one of the top shows, and also, came, I think I think there was like a few years where we didn't have a new Doctor Who, right? Sometime in the last 10 years. Was there like a dip off? No, I
think there's been like a year or two
right?
between each new Doctor.
Yeah.
So it's like sometimes you get these dips.
But yeah, so we had, great year for Doctor Who, obviously, this year. And in 2014, classic Doctor Who. And so, yeah, it's so interesting to see. And then, going back to music, like Taylor Swift, Lana Del Rey, all of these artists who continue to thrive and release new music, I think. And musically, even the music that we're listening to, like Noah Kahan is very, I would say, Mumford & Sons coded.
Yes,
and, there's
totally.
so, I think, a lot of like the musical trends and types were kind of have continued and changed or, are kind of coming back. I feel like just culturally, it really feels like there's this, not return to 24 or like return to the kind of that vibe overall in a lot of different ways.
I mean, God, when did Take Me to Church come out? Because that I think was also.
Oh my God, Hosier! Like how did
like oh yeah, it was September 2013.
Yep.
Because I think I saw him in concert on his first tour off the first album, and I'd only heard Take Me to Church before, and I think that would have been spring of 2014, I think. Mm-hmm. And now of course, like his most recent album has been like really well received and is fantastic. And oh my God, that's crazy that was that long ago. Also, this is an aside, but I don't know if I've ever told you this, but like I like know him a little bit. You're so right. I hadn't really thought about the music aspect of it, but we really are kind of like revisiting. And obviously, like some of that just has to do with the fact that it's like really popular and talented artists like Taylor Swift, like Hosier, they're just going to continue making music, and that music will continue to be loved by their fans, right? And so it's like there's some sort of inevitability within that.
Yeah.
But I do think you're right in that like Noah Kahan and Mumford & Sons was the first thing I thought about when he started talking about music, where I was like, that sort of 2010 to 2015 sound.
Right? And then, Sabrina Carpenter, I feel like gives off a very, Katy Perry and Teenage Dream or like California Girls kind of vibe in so many ways. I feel like there's like the girl, kind of like the girly pop, like bubblegum, but also kind of like pop diva vibe. Like I feel like there's such a resurgence of like that type of music. Obviously pop music never went away. Pop music is pop music. But yeah, I feel like I see so like in like, the pop girlies that are trending right now. I mean, Charlie XCX, like we had an IRL for her in Tumblr in 2014. Like she was on Tumblr, like we did like, concert for her. So even, Charlie XCX being huge this year, and the Brat Summer is so 2014, it's Tumblr so 2014 coded.
Yes, it really is. It's funny too. I need to dig into my archive and find this post. I know I've reblogged it a couple times, but it's one of those posts that it's like, it's just like a sort of vibe post, and so I've never tagged it with anything, so it's going to be impossible to find on my own blog. But it's like a, someone sort of describing a vibe, and it's like, it's 2014, you're like in the car with your friend listening to this thing, and they show you a funny Vine, and it sort of like perfectly, I think, encapsulates that feeling. So I'll see if I can track it down. And I do think there's something to be said. I also will post this Vox article I found about how in 2020, when everybody was in quarantine, like a bunch of people on TikTok started like becoming obsessed with 2014 Tumblr aesthetic core. And I do think that there's like this very interesting nostalgia for 2014 specifically.
Yeah.
And sort of the internet that we had in 2014 that started to really die in 2015. And I think one of the reasons that I am still so active on Tumblr, and that we have a podcast about Tumblr and you work there and we both love this thing so much, is because it's like the last stronghold of the good internet that existed in 2014.
I could not agree with you more, Lauren. I started working at Tumblr in 2014.
Yes,
actually,
exactly.
September 14th, 2014 was my
No
first day.
way. Oh my God. Well, happy anniversary.
Thank you so much. It's been
10 years and 2 days.
I spent a third
crazy.
of my life working at Tumblr, essentially.
That's wild.
Which is wild to think about and so cool. And yeah, I could not agree with you more. Like, I love working at Tumblr because I still feel like it's this special place on the internet. One of my coworkers, Joan, described Tumblr as she's our creative strategist. She started describing Tumblr as like the internet's third place. And I feel like that's such a great way to describe it, because I've always said, like, Tumblr's your internet home, your blog is your bedroom, and you decorate it however you want, and you can decorate your dashboard how you want your life to look. And so yeah, I'm both so nostalgic for that 2014 Tumblr and also feel it so much, in kind of the vibes of today. And also on the Tumblr of today, we're seeing like a lot of blogs get reactivated again, blogs that had been, not active for the past few years coming back. Like I even had a friend recently like mention that to me. He said, oh yeah, I rejoined Tumblr and I noticed that a lot of folks, my dashboard is more active again. And so it's great to see that resurgence. Even my Tumblr theme, Lauren, is the 2014 or like OG,
yes!
I think it's even earlier Tumblr dashboard. I've stayed there.
I love that. And I do think it's funny too, thinking about like 2014 was 10 years ago, which is crazy. And then when you think about 10 years prior to that, 2004, like the difference between like 2004 and 2014 cannot be measured. Whereas like 2014 to now feels like much more containable. And I'm sure the part of that is the fact that like both of us were essentially children in 2004. I was 13
we did a lot
years
of changing.
old. So like, obviously the difference between being 13 and being 23 is enormous. But like 2004, I think like I had barely gotten my first iPod. Like I think I think 2004 actually is the year that my Apple Music goes back to, from like in my like first purchased song or whatever. So yeah, I mean, like it's crazy to think about the ways in which technology has grown sort of leading up to 2014, and in some ways feels like it's slowed, and feels like the internet has kind of like we sort of made all these huge changes and huge strides, with 2014 kind of being the culmination of all of those things. And then since then, it feels like things have kind of slowed down in a strange way. I don't know. Am I the only one who feels that way?
No, I totally see what you mean. Like, I feel like every day or every month there was some new like big technological thing that was like dramatically impacting how we use the internet, or how we like interacted with the world, going from flip phones to Blackberries to iPhones, and like just everyone having a smartphone. I feel like started like right around there is where everyone started having, the internet in the palm of their hand. Most people did. And so, I think those changes. And then since then, for the past 10 years, everyone's had the internet in the palm of their hand. We've had how many iPhone, like everyone's been holding different iterations of the same iPhone for the past 10, 15 years. And so I completely agree with what you're saying. I feel like everything kind of slowed technologically, and then everything exploded content wise. It kind of felt like back in the day, it was so, it was very easy for me every day to go through my entire dashboard. Yes. And now that would be impossible. I could not do that. Also because I now follow so many blogs, but you can't even do that on any, like Tumblr does not insert like a ton of algorithmic content into your dashboard. You're scrolling and you're seeing essentially who you're following, and then whatever like few ads are in stream. But other socials do. So you scroll who you're following, and you could never get back to the beginning because you're scrolling who you're following, and then every other post or even more are the algorithmic, like you might like this kind of inserted post. You can never get to the end. And the same with, TV and movies. Everyone kind of felt like they were watching the same things. Like streaming had just really had barely picked up then. And now it's how can you keep up with everything that's coming out? And so it's also interesting to see with the explosion of media, how much of the like TV and movies that were trending on Tumblr 10 years ago are still trending on Tumblr today, despite the huge increase in content.
God, that is such a good point. Like the fact that we have kind of become this monoculture when it comes to like structures and systems, right? Like everybody has like one of 3 phones, right? Like you either have an iPhone, you have a Samsung Galaxy, or you have a Google Android thing, right? Like that's it. And if you are on social media, you are most likely spending most of your time in one of like 5 places, right? Like you are on Instagram, you are on TikTok, you are on Tumblr, you are on Twitter, you are on one of the Fediverse, you know, Threads, Blue Sky, Mastodon, whatever. But like that's it. And then like, I mean, Reddit's kind of its own thing. So I'm going to leave that aside. But like, yeah, we are all sort of operating in a lot of the same ways in terms of the tools that we're using. But yeah, you're right. In terms of like the content that's out there, there's just so much. And because there's so much, and we've talked about this so many times on this show, like because there's so much and because so many, you know, places that pay for content and for art are focused on getting as many things out to as many different people as possible and sort of having this smorgasbord available to you, things are shorter and shorter lived. And so then it's like, you know, shows that are around now when we're on Tumblr in 2034 and we compare the trending shows then to now, like I bet Supernatural will still be trending, as will Gravity Falls and Danny Phantom, but like not that many shows from 2024 will be, right? Yeah. And like that I think is interesting. And you're so right. So there's just like there's so much content now that has sort of created this weird variety in a different way.
It takes so much more for a show to establish a kind of, like, I don't know, grasp on culture in the same long-term kind of impactful way. Yeah, that's such a good point. I'm trying to think right now of what show right now that, you know, has come out in the last couple of years will have the same impact or could have the same impact as, you know, like Doctor Who or Supernatural or Hannibal or even Merlin, which ended before it started trending on Tumblr.
Yeah. And it was that heartbreaking finale that drove it home.
And it's so true. I'm trying, like, I feel like we need to do another episode on that kind of concept as well, because I feel like we could go on. Like, I have so many more things to say that my brain isn't letting me say any of them, Lauren.
No, I'm totally with you. One of the things that, like, I feel like we talk about a lot as, like, a culture, by which I mean, like, you know, writers about TV and pop culture and music and the internet. A lot of those people are constantly talking about the monoculture, right? Mm-hmm. And, like, the fact that we haven't really had a monoculture for a long time, other than, I think, like, Taylor Swift or, like, Beyonce, right? Like those are sort of, like, two of the few artists who have, like, kind of transcended the enormous amounts of different kind of music that you listen to at the press of a button now to, like, sort of like everybody around the world knows who, like, Taylor Swift is, right? Pretty much. But I think even without sort of the driving monoculture of the, you know, sort of, I think pre-iTunes, pre-social media, you know, kind of like pre-2005 days, I think even without that, there was still a sense of some degree of monoculture in niche spaces, right? So it's like, I do think that, like, Supernatural is, like, part of the monoculture of Tumblr, right? Mm-hmm. And, like, so is, like, Merlin, so is, like, certain sort of Tumblr quirks, like all the things that we've talked about when it comes to, like, the uniqueness of Tumblr's ecosystem, I think is, like, the monoculture. And I think that the only monoculture moment that, like, Tumblr has really had, I think Our Flag Means Death got, like, close in terms of, like, the bigness of it on Tumblr. But I think Goncharov, like, I think Tumblr is sort of like when there wasn't a monoculture anymore of shows and movies that everybody was talking about, Tumblr just created its own. And I love that.
Oh my gosh, Lauren, that is such a great point. Oh, I've never thought of it that way.
It's like we needed some sort of unifying thing. And so I was like, well, we're just going to make this elaborate inside joke.
Oh, absolutely incredible. Another reason why I love Tumblr so much. I mean, where else, what other platform is going to create their own entire film to obsess over, because they all need something. They're like, what's the next thing?
What can we agree upon?
Yeah. And also, as you were talking about everyone using kind of the same 5 websites, you know, I remember, like, I think about StumbleUpon.
Yeah.
And how much I loved going on StumbleUpon and finding cool websites and other, you know, like places on the internet to play around in. And it feels like that is so much less the culture these days. Like even with, you know, the prevalence of, say, you know, apps and all these other things, and, you know, there's like cool apps and games that you can play and, you know, of course, but like it does feel very, very different in the way that, you know, it just seems, yeah, like people are using the same few phones, as you said, going to the same few websites, and the internet is so huge. It's full of so much content. Like what else is out there? What else is afoot? What other cool websites do we not know about yet?
and it's been I think it's harder to find those things now, right? And that is a point of discussion I see on Tumblr a lot too. I don't know if you have other sort of final thoughts or questions or facts and figures about 2014 to share, but why do you think we or you specifically is nostalgic for 2014? Like what about 2014 personally for you makes you nostalgic for it?
I think there's a few different things or reasons. I think one is it feels like a very kind of innocent, almost secure time compared to, you know, I would say just like the climate today or the, you know, especially post 2016. I feel like 2016 things changed so much, especially in the States. And I feel like, yeah, Tumblr, like the Tumblr 2014 era feels like a time when everyone was just like unabashedly like earnest and like enthusiastic and caring so deeply about really like, I don't know, you know, fandom, but also, I don't know. Yeah, it felt like a very earnest time. I think that is kind of what it encapsulates. Like it was very like hopeful, fun. And, you know, when, you know, people were like the aesthetic bloggers and all these different, you know, types of blogs felt very much like people were like kind of building their world and doing it on Tumblr or building the world or like, you know, seeing beyond the world of their favorite show and doing it on Tumblr or whatever it was. And I think that, you know, yeah, really kind of strikes a chord for me. And also, you know, I think there's also a part of it where I'm just thinking, you know, I was 21 in 2014 and I'm definitely nostalgic for like that kind of, you know, yeah, like youth. Yeah. Like honestly, I was so innocent back then. So innocent. So, you know, so mindful, so demure. What about you, Lauren?
I mean, I plus one to all of that. And I do think that like, I do think that there's like an interesting kind of collective nostalgia that I think drives my own nostalgia, right? And I do think that like, we are now in our 30s, right? And like the people in their 30s are now like driving culture in a slightly different way, right? Like youth always drives culture. But then like, you know, we are now sort of established adults. And so like, you know, we are paying for things and whatnot that like are establishing culture in kind of a more settled way. And so I think that like, simply because generationally, I think that there is just as a natural inclination to be nostalgic for your early 20s, right? I just think that like we're now sort of establishing that nostalgia as like a cultural norm, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, I definitely, you know, I was 23 in 2014 and being 23 is the fucking worst. Like it is like Blink-182 was right. Nobody likes being 23. Like it's just a hard age. And it was, it was hard. It was hard for me. But then in 2015, I got very, very sick. And then I started the Bright Sessions and sort of started like this new path of my life. So 2014 to me also has this like weird kind of like amber around it of like, the like last moment of a potential future that I could have had that didn't exist. And this, maybe we'll do an episode on this at some point, even though I've never seen anybody talk about it on Tumblr, but I want to figure out how to get people to start talking about it on Tumblr. I don't know if I've mentioned it to you before, but have you ever heard of hauntology?
No.
So I went on a whole rabbit hole about this a couple of weeks ago, like over the summer, because I've been working on this new project that it involves like a lot of sort of diving into my own personal nostalgia around music and then just also like music in general. And I found this genre of music from the early 2000s in England called hauntology that's like about sort of using old methods and things like that and old sound footage and whatnot. But it's also like this theory, and it's too like complicated to get into now, but like basically it is the idea of mourning a future you never had. And I do feel like increasingly that is a huge part of nostalgia for like an earlier internet, is like,
yeah,
we had sort of a couple paths that we could have gone down in terms of what the internet became. And I don't think we took the worst path, but I think that we took not the best path, sort of societally speaking. But again, I do think that like Tumblr is sort of like the one branch that's like, oh, like the good internet sort of is over here. Like, you know, Tumblr still exists in the world of the internet writ large, but like it got a little bit closer to the good timeline than everybody else. Anyway, I could go on about hauntology and about the specific kind of nostalgia and how it interacts with culture now and another time. But yeah, I think that's kind of my specific nostalgia, is like this idea that 2014 was this pivot point, and we pivoted in a way that, you know, maybe wasn't the best way, right, with the years that followed.
I 100% agree and see what you're saying there. And I would love to do a hauntology episode, because I feel like there's, so many other paths that we can go down and talk about. And I like, as you were talking, I was thinking, you're so right. One of the things that makes me so nostalgic for 2014, and I'm sure makes so many other people who kind of came up on the internet around that time nostalgic for 2014, and people who didn't come around on the internet at that time, but are starting to experience it, you know, through kind of that nostalgia existing, was just the potential that 2014 held, both, you know, for, you know, ourselves, but also for the world at large, as you're saying. And that potential, I think, it feels like you're kind of, going back in time a little when you're diving into, there's so many, I mean, I was looking at all the 2014 tags, and in addition to, you know, Tumblr 2014 and all of those, there's 2014 revival, 2014 nostalgia, 2014 core, and then there's like so many of those, and so many of the posts are tagged with, you know, a lot of the same things. And it is kind of like stepping back into that time, but also stepping back into 2024's version of that time, which largely, if you're on Tumblr looking at 2014 core content or 2014 nostalgia content, yes, it'll be people who are like OGs posting that in 2014, but Tumblr's over 54% Gen Z. So it'll also be a lot of people who are now, you know, creating that content for, you know, new people to consume, so they're having that kind of a different type of nostalgia, kind of in the way that, you know, I have such nostalgia for the 70s and 80s.
Totally.
I love like oldies, and I feel like I would have loved to experience, you know, living in like the late 70s, or like being a teenager in the 90s versus being a kid in the 90s. I feel like, you know, so many people have said that the 90s. So it's really interesting to kind of see that nostalgia happen from both sides of the coin, from, you know, from like us in our 30s and beyond, but also people who are much younger than us and maybe weren't quite in the same internet spaces at that time, but are now reminiscing on it.
Yeah.
Or reflecting on it. Yeah.
I love that. That's so well put. Well, I mean, we're already in our feels, but should we get further into our feels and head over into our feels corner?
Let's do it, Lauren.
What has you in your feels this month, Cher?
So I mean, I think yes, this entire conversation, I'm getting nostalgic. I'm like, what shows am I gonna queue up to rewatch at the moment? So I'm definitely in my feels about that. I'm also, as we mentioned earlier in the episode, in my feels about last night's Emmys. You know, there were just so many great shows that won and also didn't win, but I just, I still love award season. I don't want to get into all my notes about how award shows are and everything now, because I feel like that could be a whole other episode, and I don't want to go down that road. But yeah, I'm in my feels about the Emmys. Was super excited that, you know, Shogun swept. Was so excited to see that Hacks, you know, did so well. I loved a little Schitt's Creek throwback that we got. So yeah, I would say Tumblr today has me in my feels, and also Tumblr in 2014 does too. How about you?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, I love the Shogun news. I didn't actually watch the Emmys, but the Shogun news was really great. And yeah, there's something about the fact that that's been FX's most watched show of the past year, I think. And like, it had crazy viewership. It was critically acclaimed. And then it got all of these Emmys. And it's a show, you know, that is subtitled and that is, you know, primarily in Japanese and that has primarily Japanese actors. And I don't know, there's just something about that that really, I think, cemented in my mind what a different place we are in now than we were 10 years ago, right? Where it's like, and it's interesting. I've seen some commentary around like Americans maybe being more up for things like Shogun or like Squid Game, right? Things that you're watching with with subtitles because a lot of people are putting their closed captions or the subtitles on their TV anyway because of the way in which dialogue mixing has changed. That's a whole other conversation and certainly like a pet peeve of my own and my partner's because we both work in sound and the way that some TV shows are mixed now is completely fucking insane. But regardless of the reason behind it, it's just cool that people are sort of embracing more and more foreign content, right? Yeah. And then sort of again on the content side, this past weekend we watched. It's funny, me and my partner actually spent a long time talking about 2014 this weekend because like we were talking about how 2014 sort of had this shift in action and the way that like action functions in movies, specifically because of like John Wick and because Captain America the Winter Soldier and like Daredevil like the next year and things like that. But we watched the new Netflix movie Rebel Ridge this past weekend, which is an action thriller. It was a really fun movie. It was like just very satisfying to watch. And it has me in my feels because, not because it was a particularly emotional movie, but because I love action movies, but also like it was an action movie that didn't star anybody super famous. I'd never seen the lead guy in anything before. He's British, and so he's been in some British things, but I'd never seen him before. And it didn't look like it cost very much money. There was like no CGI. Like it was just like, you know, a mid-range Netflix movie that was written and directed well, that was acted well by people that are not uber famous. And I was just like, yeah, let's get back to this stuff. Yes. Like, let's do more mid-range action movies with like no massive CGI explosions, like just good hand-to-hand combat. Like, I'm here for this renaissance.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like, you know, we're seeing that so much too, like a return to so many of the types of movies that we like were far more common 10, 15 years ago, which is so interesting given the fact that, as we were saying earlier, there's so much more content today. But yeah, like I think that like those types of action movies being back, the rom-com returning in a big way. I feel like we've seen, you know, those come back. So yeah, I'm gonna have to, Rebel Ridge, you said
Rebel
it was called?
Ridge. Yeah. Okay, and it was like number one on Netflix this weekend.
Love that. See, and I love that too. Yeah. You know, and I think there is such a market for these types of titles. You know, people want to see a fun, good movie. It doesn't have to be the highest budget with actors that they have heard of or that are, you know, in every action movie. You know, there's obviously a market for that. Duh. But I think there is a huge market that, you know, was tapped before and maybe is less tapped now. Could be, I don't know. I'm really into this metaphor that isn't really quite working. But I feel like, yeah, there's a space in the market that I'm excited is, you know, being filled again.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I'm Lauren Shippen, and you can find me at thelauren.tumblr.com.
And I'm Cher McAnelly. You can find me at overshares.tumblr.com. This has been Dashboard Diaries, and
may your anons always be loving,
your dash always refreshed,
your gifts always be loading,
and your ships always canon.
May the fixed reading always be finished.
And the answers you seek, always in the reblogs.
Thanks for scrolling with us.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.